the return on investment on accessibility or inaccessibility, is it possible to measure impact on business outcomes? And this ties into buy-in. This ties into how do we get there to be change at the top down. This ties into how do we make that connection greater between what's happening in the digital world and how it's impacting people in their real life, like the doctor's appointments and things like that. So this was the question that I posed when I was setting up this talk. Is it possible to measure the impact? And I think, following on from Charlie, I could just end my talk by saying, yes, yes, it is. And here's a picture of someone celebrating and just saying yes. So it is possible. So what I decided is to change my title at the very last minute. Terrible thing to do for any speaker. The ROI on accessibility is a time to measure the impact on business outcomes. And the reason for this is the conversation around accessibility has been going on for so long, yet the change online, if we just focus in the digital world, is very, very slow. And I continually question why. It is my belief that there's a data deficit here, that we're not showing the true measurable outcomes because, for example, maybe I think for a lot of accessibility professionals, their interest in it comes from doing the right thing, doing the best thing. But actually, if we want to get buy-in from leadership, what we have to be doing as well is talking about the business outcomes. And that can kind of rub people the wrong way. It's not, they don't want to be talking about money. They don't want to be talking about profits. But actually, if we want to change things, I think we need to start measuring, and we need to talk the business language. So this will probably be difficult for people to see and read, and so I'll read it out, not all of it. But Kay Moores is probably somebody that a lot of you follow online. I did invite her to be here today, but actually she was busy. And Kay is very publicly on LinkedIn. You can see in her LinkedIn profile, she's a brain injury survivor, hemiplegic, but she's also a designer. And she shares a lot of her experiences online. And she shared this maybe a week ago, 2 weeks ago. And I think this is the most important post on the internet, bar none. Yet it got 6 likes and 2 comments, right? So I'm going to read out what Kay said. She said that finding suppliers who have an accessible product, platform, or service is like trying to find a needle in the proverbial haystack. It takes me at least 10 times longer to find a suitable supplier, which causes unnecessary workload, exasperates my symptoms, and hurts my brain. If you want me to buy from you, make your product and your marketing accessible. Otherwise, I will keep shopping around no matter how good your search engine optimization or brand awareness is. I'll skip to the last part, which is important. So here is a note to people who try to market to me every day. If you are not accessible, I am not going to buy from you. To the brands who have embraced accessibility, you get my business and loyalty. And I just think that here is the voice of a person with money. Here is the voice of a person that is wanting to buy, but the decisions, the design decisions, the engineering, the marketing decisions of that company have locked somebody out. And here is somebody being vocal about it. And honestly, I think that is the most important message on the internet, telling brands, I want to buy from you. Just make it easier and you get my money. Not only do you get my money, you get my loyalty. People with disabilities have more brand loyalty because it takes them so much longer to find a good supplier. So why not do it? Really what is happening, we have this maybe disconnect. We have people if we think about the funnel or the customer journey, we have the marketers, advertisers that are looking at their Google Analytics. Oh, we have high bounce rates. Oh, we have low conversions. Okay, well, the best way to fix that is to spend more money on advertising. It obviously means that our advertising campaigns weren't good enough. We need more billboards. We need to be on the side of more buses. But actually, the point of sale and that customer journey, it's not consistent. And, you know, there's other stages in the customer journey that are locking people out. And a shocking fact is that actually the way people's actions, how they behave online, is telling you if they understand or can use your site. Charlie touched on understandable as a principle in terms of WCAG. Principle 3. This is what I focus on. This is what we focus on in my company Tigim. The linguistic intelligence around this. How can we measure if something is understandable? Charlie mentioned readability. Readability is okay, but it's flawed. It doesn't go deep enough into understanding the cognitive literacy, education, language needs of people. It's a good starting point, but it's not enough. And so actually, almost every company has Google Analytics embedded into their websites, and much more sophisticated. The actions of people is telling us what is happening. It is telling us if it's too difficult to use your site. We just need to know where to look. And this is a big thing. We might see a high bounce rate. We might see a low conversion rate. And we think that the answer is the top of the funnel, spend more on advertising, rather than fix that payment gateway, rather than fix that form that the place that's using placeholders. So the clue here is that it is actually on your web page. We've seen from events today and Tal that you have your components, you have your color contrasts, you have the form labels, the buttons, and you have the language. So there are all of these ways that we're creating an interface, the UI. We're creating a way to interact with a human, yet there's something in there that is not making that interaction easy. And every company needs to ask, how does your language, or how does our language, the layout and the design impact behavior? So nothing is happening in isolation. All of these things are interacting together in order to interact with the user as well. I see a lot of posts online from the content design community saying that they get left out of processes. They shouldn't, you know, there needs to be more alignment between these organizations, because the words interact with the form fields, with the colors, with the experience. If we're interested in creating a user experience, all of these things have to combine together to make it better for the user. So how is our language on each page, the layout and the design, impacting what people are doing? And I wanted to show this as an example because this is from a very large financial institute in Ireland that I know have gone through accessibility testing. And their feedback form is, how easy or difficult is it for you to find what you want on this website today? 0 is very difficult. 10 is very easy. Now, I don't know about anyone else. You don't need cognitive disabilities or anything to be confused by this question. You're asking me 2 questions, and the very nature of putting a scale, normally difficult is up there, and there is so many things to say about this, but still people think, well, nobody filled out our form. Nobody has problems because they didn't fill it out. Maybe they didn't fill it out because your sentence and your questions don't make sense. So we need to analyze that. Does this make sense? The answer there is no. If we look at e-commerce, we're looking at online shopping, and some of you may go to the gym, buy makeup, moisturizers, or a computer, and we see language like this. And the question is, if you were working in a store and somebody came in to ask, what protein should I buy? I want to go to the gym. Would you answer with this sentence? If they asked you about a moisturizer, would you answer with these sentences about a computer? So we're not actually using human language in how we are interacting with people online. And often we're forgetting that we need to analyze the language, the copy that is in conjunction with all of the design elements, because this can put an unnecessary cognitive load on an individual. And if we're putting cognitive load on them, the chances are we're going to lose them. So what we look at is a form of interaction intelligence. So we've developed a 3-step process. And for any interaction, the first thing you always need to consider is who is involved? Who is your audience? Who are you talking to? Because you're not going to use the same language to an adult as you use to a child. So start with the audience. Who are we talking to? If you're building products for the general public have dyslexia. The general public do not speak English as their first language. We live in such a diverse cultures. The general public, maybe they're tired in the evening and they actually, just want information really easily. We need to start with the abilities of the audience. Craig mentioned earlier about personas, user personas, Finance Freddy and Disability Dave or something like that. When we think about one individual on a persona, we're missing the collective ability of the group, of the composition of the group. And we need to think about what is not just the reading age, but what is the cultural background of them? How should we interact with them to get the best? We need to combine that with the language we're using and a cognitive analysis. Is there too many buttons on the page? Is there too many forms? Is there too much going on the page? Is the language too difficult? So how do those components and elements interact with each other to impact the individual? And the final piece then is the behavioral analysis. And that can come from your Google Analytics. How many people arrived on your page and how many people left? So when we analyze the page, if we can see that there's 15 form fields to complete and there's a lot of different colors, or there's low contrast and there's complex words, and we can say that this has a high cognitive load factor and we lost a lot of people, we can pretty much kind of make some statistical analysis that the level of cognitive load we were putting on people is actually an indicator of why we've lost them as well. And so accessibility and designing at the edges is what is going to bring that innovation. So we can test these things, make the language easier, reduce the number of forms, reduce the number of buttons, reduce the number of options there, make it easier for people, and we can test that before and after what outcomes were there. And so we conducted an analysis of an e-commerce site. This is a really large organization. They sell a lot of protein, and they're selling protein shakes to people that go to the gym. People that go to the gym, typically maybe they're 18, 25 years old. Of course, there's older, but that's maybe their target. So if you're an 18-year-old guy and you just want to beef up and go to the gym, you don't want to be reading a product description that means you need a science degree. So when we analyze the language on the page, even though the design, there's a lot of white space, right? White space with complex language is still high cognitive load. When we analyze the language that's going on, we can see that there's the user, the person needs to have a high level of literacy, a high level of education, but also they need to be able to understand all of these things as well. And so what happens is the more cognitive load you put on the user, what we found was that they were spending longer on the page. From an e-commerce perspective, people think it's great. We have a lot of people on our page for a long time, but actually this was not equating to more sales. They were on the page, but it wasn't giving more sales. And so what can happen in the world of e-commerce, the world online, is that you're giving people time to open new tabs. That means they're going to competitor sites. They're looking for the same product somewhere else, and they're looking for a company that's going to sell them something, leading with the benefits, making it easier. So a high cognitive load online, a high complexity, increases the abandoned carts. And people are leaving a trail of abandoned carts around the internet because they simply want to buy something in an easy way. And the majority of people are also buying more on their mobile phones. I think 64% of sales are going on mobile phones now, certainly in Ireland. So the nature of buying is that they're buying on their phones late in the evening. So you might be somebody that, you know, has a high literacy, has a high education level, but if you're tired at the end of the day and you're putting complex language and high cognitive load in front of people, you're going to lose them. And we can model that. And that's really important to be able to model as well. So when we looked at this behavior and we modeled it against the language that people were using, we were able to understand that this language and the components on the page are too difficult for people, and they're pushing them away. We're losing them to competitor sites. So with modeling, we were able to then adapt the language, adapt the style of the page to make it more accessible, which then in a number of weeks was able to give 103% conversion uplift. You know, so your conversion rates are people are okay with a conversion rate being 3%. I disagree. I don't think your conversion rate should be 3%. You shouldn't be losing 97% of your customers. If you are, there's something happening at your point of sale. If they've got to your point of sale, you need to analyze the page, the components, the layout, the cognitive load, the language. What we also found was that time on page was reduced and the sales increased. So people were making a positive purchase decision quicker. So we weren't giving them time to explore competitor sites. We weren't giving them time to abandon the cart. We were presenting information to them in a way with cognitive ease that demonstrated the benefits of the product, that spoke to them and what they needed. And also they were less price sensitive. So people will pay money, and they might pay more money if you're going to give them something that is easier to understand. You know, what we have now, and I speak to a lot of teams, and I speak to a lot of people in the e-commerce field. It'd be interesting to know if anybody, any of the attendees are working in the e-commerce field. Do let us know in the chat. What we have now, it seems to me, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, we have all of these departments: marketing, sales, digital, can be product or your e-commerce, design, engineering, and maybe accessibility. If your company has an accessibility department, it's this smaller department at the end of the line. All of these departments are siloed. They're all separate. They're not talking to each other. So when I talk to somebody in accessibility, they don't know people in marketing. They don't know people in the sales. They don't know what's happening. And so there's this real disconnect among the departments. And really what is needed is that for all of this to come together and for companies to be able to have measurable return on investment on accessibility, is that the individual, the user, the person needs to be at the center, and all of the departments designed around that, so that there's interconnection between the departments as well. So accessibility can easily go and speak to marketing because they have the same goal. The goal is to make a wonderful, beautiful user experience that converts into a better business outcome. And so this is really where we need to go. And what we need are tools, solutions, tech tools that is going to put this into the hands of companies, so that we don't have siloed departments, broken user experiences, and trying to get that buy-in at the top level. We can't get buy-in if we can't deliver business outcomes. And those business outcomes can be things like Charlie mentioned. It could just be team engagement. It can be more sustainable roadmaps, more feature roadmaps. It doesn't necessarily have to be profit. What it can be is time to deployment, time to development. Then what we can see through the business, higher sales, higher returning customers, more brand loyalty. And so really, I just think that it's up to every organization to not just make interactions, accessible. We have to make them lovely, beautiful user experiences where everybody wants to engage with what you're doing, what you're selling, even if that is a mortgage application form, even if it is an insurance policy, anything. It needs to be a way that we can understand. It needs to be using components that don't mess with our brain, that make us feel nauseous, but that also we can measure it as well. So if anybody is interested in finding out more about how your website, how your company is interacting with people, but also how that is impacting customer behavior, then, give me a shout. I'd love to talk more about it. But I think, like Charlie said as well, everything can be measured. We can measure this and we can deliver better business outcomes that are sustainable, predictable, and I'm going to steal some of his phrases, that creates more innovation. And companies that measure and innovate are going to get ahead of the curve as well.